everyone, and welcome to our next session. Today, I have the privilege to be sharing with you about the significance of mentoring for New Zealand women. It's something that I'm particularly passionate about. For a start, though, I'll introduce myself and tell you why mentoring is so important to me. My name is Lisa Thomason, and I've been working as a statistician in industry for the past 9 years. I work at Fonterra, which is New Zealand's largest company. We basically collect and process dairy products from all around the country, from around 10,000 shareholders, and send those dairy products all around the world. My role as a statistical consultant is to support the research and development team. My role is to help with the analysis and the collection of data related to new product development, tweaking products that we currently sell as a business, and then helping to do things like shelf life, analyze taste testing data, and things like that. When I first finished my degree at uni, I went straight into my current role. And one of the things that really I noticed was that it's quite a shock to the system. You go from that academic way of doing things into industry, and stuff's very different, and you end up being shoved in the deep end. And I've chatted to some colleagues who are much more experienced than me, and they tell me that a couple of decades ago, things were quite different. That often people get a new role straight out of uni, and they would be mentored by someone who is basically, talking them through all the parts of their role. It was like an apprenticeship in statistics, and they had that mentoring just by default as part of how their teams were structured. And we don't have that very often in our teams these days. And it was something that I really felt the impact of as an early career statistician. I joined the New Zealand Stats Association just before I finished university, and I've been on the executive of that for 8 years. I spent 5 years as the student and early career representative, and what that meant for me was that was an opportunity for me to help student and early career statisticians, to provide them with networking opportunities and help provide a platform for them to connect with each other. And after 5 years of that, I was feeling a little less early career and looking for something else. And that was when I realized that people in the NZSA had been talking about mentoring, the value of mentoring, and the need for a mentoring program for a long time, but no one had done anything about it. And I saw this as an opportunity for me to come in, create the role of mentoring program coordinator. So I've now been the program coordinator for 3 years. We have just concluded the 3rd cohort of our mentoring program, and we've had a lot of success. For a start, I want to share, the purpose of the mentoring program. For us in New Zealand, many of the statisticians are working in very small teams, or sometimes they might be a lone statistician. There's also many people that just don't have someone to be a mentor for them in their current role, because many times statisticians are quite overloaded workload-wise, and mentoring a more junior statistician is often quite bottom of the list priority-wise. So the purpose of this program was to help people in the NZSA to network, to support each other. And I was really intentional when I set up this program to ensure that it was set up for success. I wanted to make sure that everyone who was coming into the program knew that this wasn't just a place where you could get free statistical consulting or ask people, which model should I use with this new data set I've got for my current role, and that it wasn't a mentoring relationship where the mentor took on a supervisory role or did proofreading or code debugging for people. But it was really intentional that that mentor is there to coach, to support, to be a listening ear, and to encourage the mentee. To launch the program, I started out with a launch webinar, which I invited all of our New Zealand Stats Association members to. The New Zealand Stats Association has over 500 current members, and they're basically supporting people who are in stats and data roles throughout the country. After that session, there was a form survey sent out so that people could sign up for the program. And then once peers were matched, we had 14 mentor-mentee peers in that first year. And I said to everyone that was involved that we needed to agree on some ground rules. The first was that the program ran for 6 months and people had to commit to being part of that full program if they joined. The second thing was that once they'd committed and were matched, I expected them to have at least 3 meetings with the person that they were paired with. And then the third thing, which I think is especially important in a mentoring program, is that I had a code of conduct, and I asked everyone who participated in the program to agree to that code of conduct before participating. And that was basically a document outlining that it's important that everybody in the program is respected and treated fairly. Over the past 3 years of the program, I've noticed some really big benefits, and the feedback I've got from participants has highlighted some key benefits. One of the key benefits that mentors have shared with me is that they've grown in confidence in their ability to be a mentor. And many of them have also shared with me that they've been surprised at how much they have learned as a mentor. And some of them have suggested that they've probably learned as much or maybe even more than the person that they were mentoring. One of the key themes I've noticed from the mentees in the program is that having other people sharing their experiences is super empowering. There are so many people in their early career stages that go through big challenges as they navigate new roles and the challenges of being a statistical consultant. Things like, stakeholder management, time management, a lot of those things that we don't really think about. And some of those mentees have shared that it's so amazing to hear others going through the same challenges. They may be going through them currently, or it may be a challenge that they've faced in the past. And hearing how other people have faced those challenges and dealt with them has been especially helpful. One of the themes that's come up in these conversations has been imposter syndrome. That's something that a lot of people experience, more than people realize, and hearing other people sharing their experiences of that can often be very helpful and push people a step in the right direction to navigating those challenges. I also think, though, this is a conference celebrating women in stats and data science, that mentoring has a particular place for women. Many women have unique challenges in the workplace. And while I think that mentoring is important for everybody, regardless of the age, career stage, I think that women have some unique challenges that make mentoring especially important. For me, I'm currently on my 3rd round of parental leave, and I've got a 3-month-old baby at the moment. And for me, I've had to go through being pregnant and working full time. I've also had to navigate that return to work and that juggle of trying to be as productive as you can in your role when you've had maybe 4 hours sleep because you've been up with a teething toddler the night before. All those challenges are things that it's sometimes not the most comfortable to talk about how to deal with those with your colleagues or your boss. So it's really nice for women to have other women who've been through those same challenges that they can talk to. There's also many women who experience challenges in terms of communication styles in the workplace. Things like maybe sometimes if you've got male colleagues or a lot of male management that you're working with, sometimes you can be told as a woman that you're maybe a little bit too passionate when you try and make a point in a meeting, and that the communication style just doesn't hit the mark when you're trying to influence. So there's many reasons why mentoring is especially important for women. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to invite our 4 panelists who are on screen for you at the moment to all introduce themselves to you. What we're going to do today is we're going to hear from 4 of our amazing NZSA women. These women have all been part of the mentoring program for at least 2 of the 3 years, and they'll all share some of their experiences of being part of the program and why they think mentoring has a significant place to play for women statisticians. So what I'd like all of our panelists to do today is to share a little bit about their background in statistics and to also share their involvement that they have had so far in the New Zealand Stats Association mentoring program. So I hand over to you, Claire, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Lisa. Great introduction. I've been involved in this mentoring program since the beginning. I've been a statistician of various sorts since about 1990, which is when I joined the New Zealand Stats Association, actually. I'm the director of the Biostatistics Centre at the University of Otago, which I've just been doing for the last 6 months or so. I know that when I was starting out, my whole background is stats. I've done a PhD in stats, master's in stats, worked in different application areas, but I never really felt like I belonged that strongly when I was younger, and I really would have benefited from having a mentor, I think, in those early years. I now work as a biostatistician and have done for the last 12 years, and so I work in a huge range of health-related areas, which is my main focus. I'm a really enthusiastic supporter of this mentoring program, and I've also done a lot of informal mentoring over the last 10 or 12 years. So that's what brings me to be here. Thank you. I'll pass on to Rena.
Hello, kia ora. So my name is Rena, and I am at this point in time a data scientist at a company called Ag Research in New Zealand. But I've only been there since 2020. Prior to that, I was a lecturer in statistics at more than one university in New Zealand for about 8 years. And I first got involved in the mentoring program when it was first rolled out, but I took a year's pause and then I came back this year. Yeah, it's a great program, and I can't wait to sing Lisa's praises because I just think she's done such an amazing job. So I'll pass over to Alice.
Kia ora. My name is Alice. I'm a senior research fellow at the Biostatistics Group, University of Otago, Wellington. So I work in the same university as Claire, but we are based in different campuses. So like Claire, my role involves working with medical and health researchers across a very diverse range of topics. And I've had somewhat unconventional path into academic career. So I started doing a graduate study in economics. I worked as a private consultant in international tax, and I came back to study. I finished a master's in statistics and a PhD in health sciences. So when I first started working, I did struggle quite a bit with identity and also being a biostatistician, working in so many different areas of medical research. So mentoring program was incredible opportunity to connect with other statisticians, quite often working in a small group, as Lisa mentioned, and working with a lot of stakeholders and colleagues. So I've been involved in the mentoring program for 2 years now. I started off in a group mentoring setting with one mentor and 2 peer mentees. So I was a mentee. This year, I'm in a 2 individual mentoring relationship, one as a mentor and mentee, and both come with their own rewards and challenges, which I would like to talk about a bit more later. So I'll hand over to Olivia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I am originally from France. I am currently a statistical scientist at the Plant and Food Research Institute in New Zealand. I did all of my studies in France. I got a master's degree in not really statistics, but bioinformatics, biostatistics, and modeling. That's what it was called. And got the opportunity to do a PhD when moving on the other side of the world. So I moved to New Zealand to do a PhD in statistics. After that, I was a lecturer at the university where I did my PhD for a little bit more than a year. And then I switched 2 years ago to my current job. So I switched from academia to a more industry setting. I work on analyzing omics dataset and specifically integrating multi-omics data, mostly that comes from plants. And the reason why I joined the mentoring program is because right at the time where Lisa set up the mentoring program, I was faced with at the time, very difficult decision for me to either stay in academia and continue being a lecturer at university or switch to my current job, so which was a more industry setting. And that was a very hard decision to take. And it was the perfect timing when Lisa advertised the mentoring program, because I felt that it would be a perfect place for me to get some advice for this change, but not only for this particular occasion. As Lisa said, I found that the transition from being in a university setting and doing your PhD to suddenly working was actually quite hard. There's a lot that you are not really prepared for, that you never really taught. And so I thought it would be very beneficial to have someone that has agreed to give you advice on a regular basis, because there are a lot of people that you can talk to, but of course everyone is very busy. So it's really nice to have the opportunity, have a setting where you can really talk about the challenges that you face, etc. I think that this was an amazing opportunity, and I'm really lucky that I got into it. And so I have been for the past 3 years in a mentoring relationship with Claire, who's here as well.
Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. For me, I'm really passionate about mentoring because I think it's a great opportunity for us to support others, for us to share our learnings with other people, and the relationship building and sharing our learnings and experiences is particularly important and can be very empowering for other women. What I'd like to do is ask all of you to share why you are passionate about mentoring and what inspired you to become involved in the mentoring program and stay around for multiple years if you've been in the program, I guess, and come back multiple times. And I'll let you answer this one first, Rena.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so it was funny because I was also in a very similar position to Olivia, in that I was in academia for quite a bit longer, like in terms of like working as a lecturer, and discovered after switching to being a consultant how different the position was. And yeah, I learned a lot in a very short amount of time. And when Lisa first mentioned this program, or when I first heard about it, I was quite keen to get involved because I had a lot of things fresh on my mind that I really wanted to share. And I just felt like similar like what Olivia was saying, like it would have been nice for me to have had someone at that point in my time to have been guiding me. And I was really keen to, like, while things were still fresh in my mind, to be that kind of guide. And also I'll mention that it was a bit lonely moving, and like just in the position that I was in, I just felt very isolated at times. And so I also just pounced on the opportunity to connect with other people that work in the same field of me, and just get to know people outside of my organization or small circle. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mentoring can be a great way of connecting with other people because it can be quite isolating. Even if you do have other stats colleagues, sometimes you don't necessarily want to tell them how you're floundering about trying to work out what to do in your first couple of years as you navigate that transition from academia to the work life.
I completely agree with Rena, and I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the mentoring program, is that there is, yes, of course, you can chat with your colleague or you can chat with, I don't know, your PhD supervisor, but there are some topics, first of all, that are a bit too hard to discuss out of the blue when you're grabbing a coffee with a colleague, etc. And having a dedicated space to be able to talk about this with someone who expects this kind of question is really important. And I think also the fact when you're starting in your career, every decision can feel like a very important decision, and like you cannot choose the wrong option because otherwise you're going to ruin everything. And having discussion with someone who has gone through this transition, just like Rena was saying, is a really good way to get some perspective, and having someone who can tell you that no, it's not the end of the world if you pick one lane and you actually realize later on you want to switch. So it's really good to have someone who has more experience and who can give you perspective on whatever you're going through as an early career statistician.
I can add to that. I was in that position a long time ago. I kind of moved from, well, I didn't take that trajectory. I worked for Stats New Zealand for a while, for our official stats organisation in New Zealand, and then I moved back into the university. But one of the things that makes me feel passionate about mentoring is that I think everyone needs to have a sense of belonging, and everyone needs to feel that there are other like-minded people around them. And I think with statistics, it's not always true, but I think that people that go into areas like maths and stats can have a tendency to be quite introverted, not necessarily socially that capable. I mean, it's not always true. I'm not making a gross generalization about that, but I know for myself, I'm quite an introverted person. And so people want to hide their insecurities. So all that you see as a young person in stats is all these amazing people that are doing this incredibly clever work that's so ingenious, and they'll give a seminar and you'll think, wow, I only understood that for about 5 minutes. Or you know, they'll write a paper and all you really see is the finished product if you're not actually working closely with those individuals. So I think with mentoring, I know when I was young, I'm not a competitive person. I'm not an outgoing person. I'm not really motivated by the theory of statistics. I like to feel as if what I'm doing has some meaning. And for me, my early application areas were in environmental, ecological things. Now I work in health research. And one of the inspiring things that someone said to me once was that they loved working in biostats, and the most important projects they were involved in were ones that actually made a difference to society. For example, they looked into what we used to call cot death. And the work that they did led to a change in the way people got their children to sleep at night as wee babies. So I don't think that those relationships occur spontaneously or naturally in the workplace. So this is one of the reasons I've always reached out to people to support them. I've always been supportive of other women in particular in the workplace, because as Lisa said, I think that women face particular challenges. You know, there still is sexism out there. A lot of women, you find there's this unconscious bias that you don't really need to listen to what a woman's saying, from my own experience. So I've always been a strong supporter of other women, a strong supporter of my colleagues, and I want, like, I'm at the other end. I'm in my 50s now. I've been working in stats for 35 years. So I'm at the other end of things, and I still remember how it felt very lonely as a young person, or I felt like I wasn't really a person that could do stats because my interest didn't coincide necessarily with the people that I worked with. So that's why I'm really passionate about it. And I believe we should be working towards having a community, and mentoring and supporting one another is what builds a strong community. And even when I look at this panel, yes, I know Alice because she works in biostats, but in another centre. But when I started in this role, we didn't know the people in Wellington. Normally, there'd be no reason for me to know any of the people on this panel. So I just think it's incredibly valuable. And the dominant culture in stats, in my experience, has tended to be quite male and quite theoretical. And to find people that are genuinely applied is quite unusual in a university setting. People think they're applied because they develop theory and they find data that they can use it on, which is quite different to the type of applied stats that I do. So that's why I feel really passionate about mentoring. Maybe I should pass it on to Alice.
Well, thank you. And I actually do want to acknowledge Claire, because it's not just talk. She does provide support and helps to create an environment where it's safe to talk about issues that are important for women, and also be open about some of the challenges we face at work. And she takes time to actually talk to you and say it's important to take breaks, or it's important to attend to these things. So I do really appreciate that. Yeah, and I also agree with Rina and Olivia on how this opportunity, the mentoring relationship, can be very helpful for people starting off career, because I find that this is unique in a sense that it's not based on the usual reporting line. So I have a very supportive manager at work to whom I talk about my career development, but having someone outside work who is not motivated by the business needs can be a really powerful thing. And also what was unique about this mentoring program was you feel safe, that there was that code of conduct that Lisa shared and asked you to agree to. Creates a structure where people feel safe and supported, and you can always contact Lisa if you are having any issues or trouble. So I think this mentoring program was particularly structured well and worked really well for a lot of people. Yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about this program.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing why you're so passionate about mentoring. One of the things I'd like to talk about next is advice that we have for mentors. I know that for myself and for other people who've set up and run mentoring programs, they often say, oh, when I try and recruit mentors, they're always like, what would I have to offer to a mentee? Or they often don't have that confidence if they haven't been a mentor before, because they're not really sure what mentoring might involve. They're not sure how they'd go about it, or how to deal with some of the things they might come across as a mentor. So what I'd like each of you to do is to share a piece of advice that you have for someone who's considering becoming a mentor. And I'll let you kick us off with this one, Alice.
Thank you. I think the biggest insight that I gained from being a mentor was that relationship is really very enriching for both the mentor and mentee. And being a mentor especially provides you with an opportunity to reflect on your own experiences, and that can be quite reaffirming but also very challenging. So my advice is to be present and listen actively, and keep your heart and mind open to what the mentee brings to the table, or issues that the mentee wants to discuss.
I think that's fantastic advice, Alice. I definitely agree that mentors can, if they're open-minded, can get a lot out of the mentoring relationship.
I think something I would add to that, because I got it wrong, is that, so when you first meet with your mentee, it's okay to ask them lots of questions to gauge, like what they want to get out of the mentoring program, and understand where they're coming from and where they're at, and to give them room to tell you, and take a bit of a lead in the situation. Like, so just because you're the mentor doesn't mean that you have to be like totally dominating the whole situation. It is actually two equals. And I feel like the first time I was a mentor, I did it fairly well, but the second time, for some reason, I just dominated way too much and just felt like, I was just kind of like talking at my mentee. So just learn from my mistakes. Like it's you get a lot more out of these sessions when it's more like a conversation rather than you lecturing someone. Like, I mean, to be fair, like my mentee was just more quiet, and so I can't bear silence. Like, it makes me nervous, and so I just immediately start to fill it. So I just need to learn to chill out personally. But yeah, you get a lot more out of it if you treat it as a conversation. Yeah.
It's nice to hear, though, that despite, I guess, it's something that you learned from, that you can also be like reflecting on how you could have done things differently if you're in a new mentoring relationship where there was silences. You might be able to think about how to, ask some more questions that might get that relationship going a bit better.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Rina. And actually, one of the advice that I would give to mentor is to don't be too serious. So as Rina said, it's not a lecture. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about my mentoring relationship with Claire is that right away, she made me feel very comfortable. We didn't start with a very serious meeting where we have set agenda, etc. But we really started the conversation. And I think when you are a mentee, it's easy to be intimidated because you're talking to someone who might be you consider as your senior and has more experience, etc. And Claire was amazing at just making me feel relaxed and making me feel part of a conversation. So don't hesitate to, I would say, ask questions, like ask the person about their hobbies, talk about stats meme, don't hesitate to make jokes, and make sure that the discussion is a pleasant one. It's not just a formal work meeting, but it's really a discussion.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think I think statisticians we're in our hearts problem solvers, and there's a real drive to hear what people are saying and think that you can provide what the answer is, or answer, provide the solution for things, especially if you've been put in the role of a mentor. I think it takes a bit of courage to just force yourself to sit back and listen and see what's going to happen, and see what the person wants to talk about or how they want to present things. The listening and being kind, they sound very simple, but actually being able to listen without saying, oh yes, I know exactly what you mean, I've done that myself. It's very hard. It's sort of a constant counseling of yourself not to do that. And I think and while it's easy to criticize ourselves for doing it, I think it's human nature to not like those silences, or not feel relaxed with just sitting and being present and listening and letting things go.
Thank you for sharing that, everybody. I particularly like the advice about mentoring relationships not needing to be formal. I think some of the best ones are when you can just come into a mentoring discussion and have a lot of informal chat without it needing to be forced or pre-prepared, and things like stats memes. If you come across a good one, that's always a good way to start a conversation with the person that you're in a mentoring relationship with, because it often breaks the ice and then the conversation can flow naturally from there. One of the things that I've come across in the mentoring program is that a lot of mentees, they want to mentor, they want to be part of a mentoring program, but they actually have no idea what they want to get out of the program, or how to actually go about having a successful mentoring relationship. And some of them even get to the end and they reflect on their time and think, because I didn't know what to do as a mentee, I didn't really actively set up those meetings with my mentor, and I didn't make the most of that opportunity. So what I want all of you to do is to think about some advice that you have for someone who's interested in being a mentor, in order for them to get the most out of a mentoring relationship that they might be in the future. I'll kick off with you this time, Olivia.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I found was very helpful, especially when I got started into the relationship, is to don't leave the mentoring meeting just for the meeting. Think about it in between different meetings. So what I mean is, for example, every time I was at work and I was encountering a situation where I wasn't sure how to respond, or that made me think, I would just write it down and make sure that I had these notes for when I had the next meeting. Or when I was thinking, for example, oh, I'm getting stressed because I have too much work and I don't know how to organize myself, then that would be a question that I could remember to ask for the next meeting. And so just having these things that you can talk about, this subject of conversation that you can talk about with your mentor when you see them, is a really good way to avoid feeling stressed, because you have a mentoring meeting that comes up and you're not sure what to ask. And it's questions that you are interested in, so the mentor is probably going to be very happy to help you and discuss with this specific topic. So I found that really keeping in mind the relationship and remembering to write down things so you're sure you're not forgetting is a really good way, at least to avoid the nervousness at the beginning. And then as the relationship develops, we find that we always have something to talk about.
That's great advice, Olivia. And if I would like to add to that, that be patient with the process and consider the whole journey of the relationship as well as the outcomes. I think for a mentee, you may have particular goals and objectives you want to get out of the mentoring relationship, and that's okay, that's completely fine. And I think a mentor will be really happy to hear your goals and objectives and work towards that. But as we were talking about it when we were talking about the mentor, advice for mentor, sometimes it's just really nice to catch up for coffee and chat about different things or the issue, and in a more informal setting, you often have more breakthroughs or gain insights into your problems or whatever you're facing. So I would say be patient and also be kind with your mentor. Yeah.
Definitely agree with your comment regarding being kind. I think it's one of those things that you don't realize until you're in a mentoring relationship and your mentor is someone who's shares their own vulnerabilities with you, that people who are experienced, they might have 20 plus years of experience more than you as a mentee, and they might still face some of the same challenges or insecurities in their role. So being kind to your mentor and realizing that some of the challenges that they face might be ones that you're also facing, even though you've got less experience.
Could I just
I'll also
also
add-
add, oh, sorry.
I just wanted to quickly add that I found it really helpful that Lisa provided some resources on how to get started, like with, like possible questions that you could go through with your mentee, or that you as a mentee could then choose from. Because sometimes when people talk about, like, you need to think about what you're going to want to get out of it, what do I want, right? Like, you spoke for choice. And so I'll just say that list was amazing to, like, just help you focus on, like, what is actually achievable, what is actually, something to think about. Yeah. So thanks. Sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to say really briefly that as a young person or an inexperienced person looking for mentoring, it's also it's like a work friendship in a sense. And if you don't feel comfortable with that person, then you shouldn't hesitate in making a change too. I some of the mentoring things I've heard of, people are saying, oh, I only met with the person once, or if that's the way things are going to go, then you haven't really hit it off. And it's worth just considering how you relate to that person that you're in the relationship with, to see whether it's worth pursuing it or not.
Would probably add a caveat to that, though. I think that sometimes people can give up too easily. That first conversation with someone, if they're a complete stranger, if you've been paired, like mentor, mentee, paired together, you've never met before, it can be hard. And it's actually really common to have lots of silences and have no idea what to say, especially if neither of you have been involved in a mentoring program that's like this before. And so I'd encourage anyone who is in a mentoring program, don't just stop after a first meeting. That's why one of the things in the program, I encourage people to have that minimum of 3 meetings. After 3 meetings, if you're still getting lots of awkward silences, have no idea what to talk about, and you're just not connecting, like you're just talking on 2 separate wavelengths, then yeah, it probably is a good time to stop and think, hey, maybe we're not the best match. Maybe we need to be paired with other people. But I think a lot of people are just like, oh, that was a bit awkward, and I'm not going to do that again. And they don't put that effort in to make it a success. And one piece of advice that really struck with me was someone who said that the mentor that had the biggest impact in his life was someone he clashed with. He said they did not see eye to eye. They found it actually quite hard to communicate with each other because they were very different personality-wise. But he said the advice that person gave him was invaluable because he had such a different perspective to himself and to the other people, like the colleagues and manager and the other people that he was closely working with. And that different perspective, he said, really stuck with him and helped him go down a path that he didn't think he would have been able to go down if he hadn't have had that mentoring relationship, which at the time didn't feel as comfortable as he may have liked. I guess that brings me to the next point, is that mentoring relationships are very different for everybody. What works for one mentoring peer might not work for another. And all of you have been involved in the mentoring program in a slightly different way. So what I'm going to do now is give some more individual questions, which really tease out the experiences you've all had as individuals in the program. For a start, I'm going to kick off with giving Claire and Olivia an opportunity to share about their mentoring relationship. The program that we've been running has been going for 3 years with 6-month blocks of the mentoring program. But after that first year, Claire and Olivia were paired and they decided to just keep on going. So they've been paired for 2.5 years. So what I want you both to do is share a bit with us about how you know a long-term relationship could be a good option for you as a mentoring peer, and how you go about making a long-term mentoring relationship successful. If you've got any tips that you can share with people who might be considering long-term mentoring relationships.
Sure. Maybe I can start with the first question. So why did we find long-term mentoring working? Well, at least for me, I found that the mentoring program was advertised as a 6-month period and you can work towards your goal with your mentor. But actually having a long-term relationship makes that this relationship is not transactional. I'm not asking for my mentor to answer a question for me or to try and solve a problem with me, but it's really becoming a relationship, like Claire said, it's a work friendship. So we are not trying to answer a specific question, but instead we have discussions. And as different problems or challenges arise, we can talk about them because we're meeting so regularly. I know that if something happens, I can talk about it with Claire because I'm meeting her in 2 weeks, for example.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that's worked out this way too is because I'm a person that likes to be organized, and if I say, well, we'll be in this arrangement, I want it to work. And for me, the way things would work would be to say, well, let's set up a regular meeting, because then neither of us needs to say, oh, do you have time to meet? So we've got a regular spot in our diaries. So we meet every couple of weeks. And what it means is that we can revisit topics. We can rely on those sessions being there. And if it doesn't work to meet at that time, then you're kind of opting out of it. But, you know, it's really interesting what Lisa was saying about difficult relationships. I totally agree with everything that you said, and I wanted to take back what I said. But in terms of an easy sort of long-term relationship, I think you need to have a positive feeling about that other person, actually. And for me, I think that if you have a long-term thing going on, then, I mean, if you're wanting information about applying for a job or, you know, finishing your PhD or getting a promotion or something like that, then it's quite a specific question. You could have mentoring that covered that specific point. And it could be a person who you don't like personally, but they actually have really good skills in terms of their career or whatever. So particular things, so a short-term arrangement would work quite well. But my personality is more, I feel more invested in people in a sense. I'm not very good at those short-term solutions. So I wonder if it's partly my own nature that sort of prompted this to be this way. But it means that if issues come up and you're upset or, you know, challenges occur, you can sort of talk them through and then you can go back to them later. I don't know, for me, I think it makes sense for mentoring to be a long-term thing, actually. But I also like very much the fact that we're connected with this formal structure of the mentoring program. I mean, not necessarily so much now, but, you know, over the last 3 mentoring seasons, if it were, if at any point Olivia or I felt that we were running into problems, we had the structure of that formal program behind us. So if Olivia's not happy about something, she could talk to Lisa. You know, it's all, I think that's a really important structure to have available, most definitely. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy my conversations with Olivia. I enjoy supporting, you know, helping people, being a positive person. I don't like everybody, though. I have to say that out loud, but I do like the people that I work with in these situations. So do you have anything more to add, Olivia?
Yes, I would say that I completely agree. One of the things that I really enjoy is the ability to, if we have a fixed term relationship, then it feels like every session is important and we should cover different ideas. Whereas because we've been chatting very regularly for the past several years, we can talk about the same topic more than once, and our discussions will evolve as our experience evolves. So, for example, chatting about time management sounded very different at the very beginning when I got my first job in industry, whereas now I have a bit more experience, and then I can relate to, I have different ways of working, and then Claire can tell me about also what she's learned, etc. One of the last point that I would like to make is just one of the things that made it very successful, our relationship very successful, is that in the very early meeting, we had very clear discussions about what we were expecting from these meetings, discussions about what we believed in, what we were comfortable talking about, etc. And that made the long-term relationship very easy because from the beginning, we knew exactly what to expect and we knew what we could discuss, etc. Whereas if you don't have this discussion early on, then you can maybe, I don't know, encounter a problem down the line. So it was really good to have these very explicit discussions right at the beginning.
Thank you for that. That's great advice, Olivia, that formal discussion up front, making sure both the mentor and the mentee are on the same page about the expectations of what that mentoring relationship will look like. And they both have that opportunity to ask questions and set the scene before you move on. And then I guess after you've set the scene, you can be a bit more informal about how you approach things. I'd like to now, I guess, put the spotlight to you, Rena, and ask you about your mentoring relationships. This year, you've been involved in 2 mentoring relationships. You've been both a mentor and a mentee. And I'd like to ask you how you manage having 2 relationships at the same time, whether there's any time management considerations of that extra time commitment, or there's any particular learnings you've had from being in both the mentor and mentee position at the same time.
So to talk to the time commitment, personally for me, it ended up actually making no difference because the first time I was involved, I was just a mentor, but we met weekly. Just because of circumstances, it just really worked out that way. And then this year I was meeting with 2 people, but it was once fortnightly. So it came out at the same time commitment as previously. But I will also mention I did step away from the program altogether for 1 year due to time constraints. So I would say that people do need to be aware that it is time that you need to commit and put in for those 6 months, if not more, if things go well. I will say, talking about my what I got from it, being both, I got really, really lucky. I'm still giddy because I got the best mentor in the world. Well, I was just really stoked about the person that I got matched up with. And I did get a lot out of meeting with this person. Funny enough, I was actually not the greatest mentee though, because I just did not prepare as well as I would have liked. A bit like what Olivia was talking about, where you can think about what to talk about as things come up. That's a brilliant piece of advice because, yeah, when you just try and sit down for 5 minutes and come up off the top of your head, you can't really think of anything. And you do get a lot more out of, I did get a lot more out of the session, so I went into it being like, oh, I've got this thing I nearly need to talk about. Yeah, I will say one thing that was a little bit, well, it was the problem that I ran into in this time around that I didn't in the first year when I was just a mentor, is that Lisa also organizes get-togethers where the mentees can talk amongst themselves about how things are going, and then the mentors can meet and talk about how things are going. And I'm a very awkward person in general, so I was a bit worried about having these weird run-ins with my respective counterparts. It actually only came up once where I was in the same meeting with my mentor for the mentors, and it wasn't actually, or it didn't end up being awkward. Of course it wasn't, because it's all in my head. But I do feel like I should mention this, that is something to be aware of, because in those meetings that Lisa was organizing, it was about giving feedback on how you think things are going and pros and cons, and it might have an impact on how you behave or what you say if you've got the person right there that you are working with. So I just thought I'd mention, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The forums for giving constructive feedback are not necessarily in a forum where, you know, the person you're giving feedback about is right there. So you're right, you do have to be careful where you choose to give feedback. What I'm keen to do, Alice, is I know that you started out as a mentor in the mentee in the program last year. You were part of a group mentoring relationship where you were a mentee, and now this year you've become a mentor. I'm really keen for you to share with us that transition from being a mentee to being a mentor and any learnings you've experienced as part of that transition process.
Yes, I think that transition was for me quite impactful, because you realize that you actually have a lot to offer as a mentor, and you learn to consolidate that confidence, and you realize how much of this is about relationship building and not about giving advice to another person. I think that theme came up a few times here. And often, you know, your mentees have the capacity to find their own solutions, and you're a witness to in their journey. And so as much as I've enjoyed my first experience, the group mentoring relationship, which was incredible, because I realized that statisticians across different organizations face very common problems, and I realized that, you know, I'm not alone, so you feel less isolated and you're in a supportive environment. And I really also enjoyed individual mentor-mentee sessions with my mentee, and focusing on the particular relationship and support her career and her individual objectives as well. So I think the two modalities were quite distinct, but both very beneficial. And I think as a mentor, you get as much out of it as being a mentee.
That's definitely feedback that came up multiple times when I've chatted to mentors, that they've often, that sometimes that they're a little bit almost embarrassed to admit that they've actually got a lot from the program. A lot of them, especially the ones who are, you know, nearing retirement, they often think, oh, I'm just going to be sharing my knowledge, I'm going to be, you know, helping my mentee. And then when they come out the other end and they say, actually, I learned a lot myself. And for me, running the program, I was targeting early career statisticians. And then I realized that actually mentoring isn't just for early career statisticians. I think it has a lot of value at that end, because that's that transition from, you know, into your first role as a statistician. It's a big one, and you do need some support with that, so you're not floundering and learning things the hard way. But I also think those people at that tail end of their career, they need mentor, or can benefit from mentoring too, because many of them, you know, they've gone through uni at such different phase where, you know, R wasn't a thing back when they maybe did their studies. And so a lot of the ways of working with technology, with statistical softwares, they can learn a lot from people who are recent graduates and starting out in their careers. What I want to give all of our panelists an opportunity to do now is to give you all a minute to share any last bits of advice or thoughts, and to sum up your thoughts on mentoring and why mentoring is significant for women, in particular women in New Zealand.
I'll go first. I just want to say that this mentoring program has been such a success, and in large part because of all the work that Lisa put in. I mean, we talked a lot about how the mentor and the mentee has to put time in and effort and think about stuff, but I cannot emphasize enough that to have a similar success story, you would need to recognize the amount of time and effort that Lisa had to do to, like, you know, get people to come together at the beginning, explain what the concept is, give out resources that people could use as they were going through the mentoring program, checking in with people in the program as it was running, and then wrapping it up really nicely so people feel like they've got, you know, because when it finishes, it's kind of like, what now? And then Lisa's right there and like, here's what's now, you know. It's just been great. So I'm just very grateful to Lisa for like running this and setting this up and doing such a great job. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, you could have other types of mentoring programs, formal or informal in different organizations, but this mentoring program is excellent and largely thanks to Lisa's efforts. And I highly recommend other, you know, organizations or statistical associations to have one as well, and probably talk to Lisa about how she runs this program. And for anybody, I think if you have access to mentoring program, just go for it. I would say it's worth the effort.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that in New Zealand specifically, it's really interesting to have this mentoring program, because New Zealand is not that big of a country, and specifically the pool of people who are doing statistics is not that large. So there is a good chance that actually you are paired with someone who you're gonna have the occasion to meet at a conference or to meet within a project that you're working on, etc. So I think having this mentoring relationship and having these networking opportunities, specifically in New Zealand, is super important. One last thing that I just wanted to mention, specifically for women, I love having a dedicated place where you can ask the questions about things that you face as a woman, that if you talk to a man, you would be like, oh, that's not sexism. That's it was just a joke or something like that. So having someone where you have dedicated time and you agree that you can talk about this thing is very valuable.
Definitely.
Yep, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I wish that this mentoring program in Stats New Zealand had existed 30 years ago. I don't know why it has never happened before. I guess all the stars were aligned to let it happen. Lisa does an excellent job, and also all of the people that take part in it. You know, it's quite clear what is meant to happen, but everybody embarks in it with good faith and has genuine engagements with their mentors and their mentees, as far as I can tell. And I just think it's a wonderful way of building a community that previously didn't easily exist. So I thank everyone for that.
Awesome. Thank you all to our panelists, to Claire, Alice, Rena, and Olivia, for sharing your insights of the New Zealand Mentoring Program and your experiences and advice relating to being involved. I would like to, I guess, sum up the session by saying mentoring is super valuable. You as a mentor or a mentee would get heaps of value out of it. If any of you in the audience are sitting in other countries thinking, hey, my stats association, we could set up a mentoring program and we could offer something similar to our members, I'm more than happy to have conversations with people about how I set mine up in more detail, or share my insights, or even support people in setting up mentoring programs, because I'm very passionate about mentoring and the benefits it can provide statisticians, in particular women statisticians. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my mentoring email into the chat. If anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free to email me on that address, or feel free to look me up on LinkedIn at Lisa Thomason, and I'm more than happy to reach out and chat mentoring or mentoring program organization and set up with anyone who's interested. Thank you very much for everyone who's joined this session, and happy mentoring for those of you who choose to become a mentor or mentee or set one up yourself based on your experiences of listening to this session. Thanks everyone.